Charles, good to meet you.
Good to meet you as well, James, and everybody else.
I'm super excited to have you on board today. So just to introduce everybody to today's event, this is the very first sales confidence event of the year for individual contributors, AEs, people looking to move into AEs and account managers. And we today have got an incredible lineup of speakers that are going to be sharing strategies, frameworks, processes, and approaches that they take to building out their success story. I'm really glad to continue to double down on our mission. So our mission at Sales Confidence is to help salespeople at each stage of their career with their mindset, well-being, and performance. And now, for the first time, we've added a financial stream. So this afternoon, we're also going to have someone talking about NFTs and talking about how you can get involved in NFTs in the marketplace. But Charles, I'm wonderfully to say that he's a great friend and also a close confidant. Charles has been helping us build our talent pool of networks in the network of Sales Confidence. So Charles, you just want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, thanks, James. Super pumped to be here, by the way, guys. I've sat in the background watching Sales Confidence events for quite some time, and actually to be here co-hosting one with James with a lot of eyes on me is actually quite a cool experience. But as James kind of alluded to, I'm a recruiter by trade, and I'm here to kind of help support potentially an extra avenue of which we're going to look at, which is talent solutions, which would be, helping people throughout the Sales Confidence community potentially navigate that. And I don't mean that in the sense of helping you find the next job, but, being able to have those calls with you to give you the right advice when you need it.
Brilliant. Cheers, Charles. For us, it's really important to create a great experience. I would love to be doing this in person, obviously, because then we could all have a beer in hand. But if that's not the case, maybe you can grab a beer from the fridge and get comfortable. Just so I can check everybody can see and hear us, hopefully you should now be in the stage area. Can you just tell me what location that you're coming in from? So is it Hackney? Is it the US? I see someone's coming in from India, which is cool. Where are you dialing in from would be super cool. And then we're going to kick off the talk. So each speaker gets 7 minutes to deliver some actionable insights. And then at the end of the speaking, hi, Becks, we can see you, just to say hi. At the end of the talk, we can do a panel discussion where you'll get to ask questions of the speakers. From there, we're also going to then have a feature where you'll be able to network with everybody in the audience. So you can network for 2 minutes per person at the end of this event. Great to see people from London, Essex, India, Boston. Lovely to have you all here. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to kick off with the first speaker today. We've got Simon Drew, who is account executive at Salsify. He's going to be talking about going back to basics. I'm really looking forward to this talk because Simon's actually someone that spent 10 years in management and then decided to move to an IC role. He's been exploring some of his learnings from those experiences today, and he's going to be talking about how he's going to use his sales leadership experience as an individual contributor and take you back to basics. So, Iain, Simon, even, you're up.
Thanks, James. And Charles, quick check. Everyone, you can hear me okay?
Yeah, you're live and good.
Superb. Thanks, James and Charles, for organising such a great event. And firstly, I'd like to say thanks, everyone, for joining today. So my name's Simon. I'm an account executive based out of London for a company called Salsify. So my talk today is on back to basics, and partly to do with the journey I've gone on over the last kind of 12 years, how I've ended up here, and then more importantly, how honing in on, as James alluded to, of how I've moved actually from leadership into an individual contributor role. So I spent 12 years in sales, 10 year plus in sales leadership. I was quite fortunate at a young age to move up into leadership, working in Australia and across APAC. And then about 4 years ago, I moved into tech and SaaS. So my last role previous to Salsify was for a tech startup out of Dublin. And I was the sales manager. And anyone in a startup who's a sales manager knows that you're building a team, leading the team, training the team, recruiting it. But also you need to sell yourself. You need to understand the product. You need to understand the process. It was really, really fun. But due to COVID, and my partner, she lives in London, I made the decision because of COVID to move to London. And that's where I actually was working with Salsify at the time, selling into them, and an account executive role came up. And this leads you on to my first point of my talk, which is invest in the future you. So I find myself, that was the second big crossroads in my career where I had to make a decision, and that was quite critical. And, as salespeople, we're money hungry. We're always looking for the next thing. It's quite easy to take the short-term gain where, you're moving to a leadership role, it's more money, etc. But how does that investment turn out for you 5 years from now, you 10 years from now? So it's really, really important, I feel, to when you're making those key decisions and moments in your life, is to think of that future self and how you can invest in future you to have a better life. What I did when I reflected on that was that, I really wanted to move into a more complex, higher value SaaS product with a larger company. Now, anyone that works in SaaS leadership knows that that's quite difficult because the processes are different. You're in 3 to 12 month sales cycles, and it's a huge step. And what I felt was the future me wouldn't get there unless I went back to basics and did it for myself. And I obviously had the experience in the previous role where I had to sell as well. And quite quickly, I was actually one of the top salespeople within that startup also. But I really, really loved it because it let me invest in myself. There's so much you need to learn inside an organization, but also outside. Like Medic by Andy White, Value Selling by Julia Thomas, that's heavily recommended by Gartner, Gap Selling, Challenger Selling. There's so much you need to learn to be really, really good at SaaS sales and being someone that excels. It's really difficult when you're in a leadership role. So that's my first point, is kind of invest in your future self. You'll find those crossroads really important to make decisions for the long term, not short term. And the next thing goes on. So I stepped into that role. It's about being curious. My VP, James Humphrey, famously said it, I was be Columbo in every situation. So I started, there was a really cool 6-week training process, but actually I spent probably the first 4 months and learning a lot, but I'm still constantly learning and looking to learn new things. And you constantly have to be curious. The reason why I find that is, I got in Salsify, the sales cycle is 3 to 12 months, as I said. My first sale didn't come to April. That's really, really tough. But I completely invested in learning, and don't wait for learning opportunities to come on within. When I was moving into Salsify, I had to learn about e-commerce. I knew what e-commerce was, but I had to learn e-commerce. I had to learn how to sell to brand manufacturers. That's our key target. I had to learn a whole new product. And then brush up on really, really rigid processes, as I said, like Medic, Challenger Selling as well. And so just engross yourself in learning. What I find is that salespeople at the beginning, and great salespeople in particular, will look to learn everything. They'll study different deals. They'll listen to call after call after call. But when they get to a certain level, they stop. And sometimes they stagnate. And they're thinking, why am I not excelling any further? And it's because you're not learning. If you're not learning, you're not excelling. So I'm a big believer in learning in every single aspect that you can find. And then that even leads to being curious when you're speaking to a prospect. Being curious about every single part of their situation, unpeel the onion to really understand what's going to drive that sale through from a timing perspective and making sure you win the deal. And then that last part leads into the recipe for success. So I'm a big believer in structure. I'm very structure driven. But when I started in Salsify, I knew there was so much I needed to learn that I created things that I did day in, day out religiously, which included aspects of learning, but then also included prospecting for myself. In Salsify, it's key to drive 2 of your own outbound meetings. So not from any marketing, and full outbound meetings per month. A lot of business I hear not doing that, which I think is crazy. I'm a big believer in outbound, absolutely love it. So that's really, really critical. You're topping up your own pipeline. You're not always reliant on business development, BDRs, SDRs. But find that recipe for success, the things you do day in, day out religiously without fail. And what I found is the greatest salespeople fail in my career. And I've seen the most greenest salespeople succeed. And what I always find is the common denominator is doing the things you need to do consistently day in, day out. What I find is some great salespeople, and they're really, really absolutely brilliant, but they'll do all the great fundamentals. They'll have that structure and process. They start succeeding, and then they stop doing them. And then suddenly it's the dip. And you will hear about loads of up and downs, and naturally there's ups and downs in sales. But I think there is some things you're in control of to constantly be, every day in, day out prospecting, learning new things, investing in yourself on an ongoing basis will lead you to have not only success, but consistency in success. And that's something I've adopted. So, I went from 0% in Q1, 80% in Q2, 286% in Q3, 246% in Q4, and I'm on track for 200+% this quarter. But it's about that consistency and really, really sticking at it. But it's tough, right? No, prospecting is really enjoyable, but again, day in, day out, it does become mundane and you've loads of different things on. So I think my main thing when I said back to basics was, one, make decisions for the long term and the short term, but understand why you're investing in yourself for the long term and see it as investing in yourself. Secondly, it's about being curious. Never stop learning. And then thirdly is find the recipe of success. And when you have that recipe and it really works, keep it. Because it's like baking a cake. It's a science. If you change the recipe of the cake, one of the elements, what will happen is the cake will turn out very differently. Could be good, could be bad. But you need to understand when you have a really successful recipe, why it's successful and why you need to do it day in, day out consistently. That's my talk today. But thanks everyone for joining. I'm happy for the Q&A session later.
Simon, that's amazing. A great way to open up the event. And also, you're the first speaker of 2022. So
excellent.
Really appreciate that. I didn't want to tell you that earlier, but you've nailed your talk. I'll let Charles introduce our next speaker.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Simon, as well. You know what, from my perspective, what a poignant talk as well to be talking about doing, some of the most simple things. But next up, we've got Iain Hayes, who's going to be talking about selling to multiple stakeholders. Iain, similar to myself, started his career in sales recruitment. We actually shared a bit of time together as well. But before making his time and move into enterprise sales with Zora and Sisense, but he's actually been at Mirakl since the beginning of, or the end of 2019, should I say. So really interested to listen to how he's been selling to multiple stakeholders throughout this journey whilst in a pandemic.
Great stuff. Thank you, Charles, for the introduction. So following on from Simon's sort of talk there about investing in yourself and going back to basics, one thing that I found quite challenging when I transitioned from recruitment, which was typically a sort of single point of contact sale, into enterprise software sales, was that sort of selling to multiple stakeholders piece. And I looked at this and I was lucky enough to work with some very successful AEs during my time as a BDR when I first joined Zora. And one thing that they did really well, and one thing that really stuck with me was very much just stripping it back and looking at the sort of simple tasks. So what I mean by that is every conversation will typically start off with a single point of contact. However, at Zora and what we do at Mirakl is we sell to multiple stakeholders. So how do you go about navigating within that account? What tools, what assets do you have to your for you to use that you can utilize so that you can understand who the right point of contacts are within different teams, and how do you go about leveraging that? So the first thing I like to do when I talk about selling to multiple stakeholders, and it sounds extremely basic, but it's just coming up with an org chart. The reason why I find this sort of really powerful, and it's very rare, being completely honest, it's very rare that you will nail that org chart 100% from the start. So it's actually then working with your potential champion, or at least a coach to begin with at the start, to start mapping out who the other points of contact are within that enterprise account and who else you need to be speaking to. And once you have this basic org chart in place, you can then start to understand, okay, how do we go about selling to these multiple stakeholders? So what I like to do, and it's worked really well for me, and it's enabled me to sell 7-figure deals over the past 4 or 5 years that I've spent in the software space, is use this traffic light system. So green is very much, this person is proactively selling Mirakl or whoever I'm working for internally on my behalf. So a true champion in that sense. Yellow, they're not negative. They don't have any negative feedback. They're not a blocker by any stretch of the imagination. They're not the most positive, but they're very much just a neutral perspective on what you're selling. It may be that actually they could potentially be in the same situation with a competitive product. And then also red. So red is very much a blocker. no way are we going to be able to sell to this person and unless we go above them or go around them. So how do you go about navigating that? And I'll come on to that shortly. If I leave them as sort of white with a white background, it means that I haven't spoken to them. It means that I need to get to them somehow. They're obviously important. Otherwise, I wouldn't have them in my org chart. And it's someone somewhere. How do I go about connecting to that person? Do I utilize our partner ecosystem? Does my exec have any relationships with their execs? Maybe investor relationships that we have before and we've built out before in the past, or maybe someone's worked at a company that they've worked at before. So it's understanding, first of all, who it is you need to speak to within this account, and then also being able to sort of plan a path to be able to get to them. So now we understand who they are. It's now a case of understanding, okay, how do we sell to each individual stakeholder? As a salesperson, I like to control the process, but actually it doesn't make sense for me to have multiple champions. Just as I don't like to be single-threaded, it's never a good place to be if your customer or your prospect is single-threaded with you. So I like to align my technical team, so my solutions engineer, with their project manager, with their solutions architect, whoever it may be leading it on their side. My executive vice president of solutions engineering will be aligned to the CTO. So we have that executive relationship and that executive sponsor on the tech side. And then on the business side, we then have to look at that as well. So is my CEO or my EVP aligned to their CEO, whoever it may be? Is my RVP aligned to the one above my champion? And really plotting this out so that everyone on my side knows who they need to be speaking to, and everyone on their side also has what I call sort of a Mirakl champion. And this is difficult. This is really tough to do. And if you do it well, you'll be able to prove value. You'll be in the best position you possibly can be to secure that deal. And it doesn't always go that smooth, right? Sometimes you will have a blocker. That person may prefer the competitor who's also trying to win this deal. Or you may have someone that's actually just worked with another piece of technology, or they've historically built things before in the past. We've always come up against it. A CTO loves building things. How do we get about that? So what does that look like? And really understanding this landscape and using your champions, if you have them, your coaches, your influencers, whoever it may be within that account, to understand, okay, the lie of the land, and also what we need to do to get to that person who potentially is a blocker and try and convince them. Or if there's no way of convincing that blocker, how can we get around them? So once we're in a position of, okay, we've now matched them up, we know who needs to speak to who from my side to their side, and they're aware of this as well. It's then a case of, okay, constantly mapping out and networking within that account. You very rarely will have multiple champions, but on more often than not, I've had multiple coaches within an account. So there's an example that springs to mind recently where I actually had sort of 2 or 3 that didn't necessarily have the influence required to become a champion, but they were able to tell me who I needed to be speaking to, what was going on from a competitive standpoint, who else was speaking to this company, and what they were doing differently, where I'd messed up. They were involved in all of the meetings, just didn't have that political power, the influence, whatever it may be, internally to make those decisions. So actually networking outside of the ones that you have already identified is vitally important. And then also outside of that account, there may well be a systems integrator they work with. There may well be a consulting company that is actually driving their strategic vision over the next sort of 3 to 5 years. Actually understanding that, and then having your partner sales manager, your partner director, whoever it may be, having a champion as well across all of these different disciplines, really has helped me to sign these 7-figure deals that I'm currently working on and have been successful signing before in the past. So I know we've only got 7 minutes and I think I'm almost at the end here. So just to summarize, there's sort of 5 key sort of steps for me. Is 1, create an org chart. 2, a clear traffic light system so you can identify if they're good, bad, or ugly. 3, making sure that they're mapped to someone within your team who has a similar capability and a similar skill set and is of similar exec presence, exec level to them. Works really well. And then once we've done that, it's a case of if we all do our jobs correctly and create multiple coaches, multiple champions within this account, we are in the best position we possibly can be to win this deal and drive as much value as possible. Hopefully I haven't waffled too much there. Bit cautious. I think I was about 7 minutes, James. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can talk for a while. So, but no, I'm really looking forward to any questions that there are later. And I'll be joining the networking event after as well with Simon. So thanks for your time. Hopefully you've taken something away from that, because I did a lot of talking there in 7 minutes.
It was great. Thank you, Iain. We'll have you back on the panel shortly. So next up, we've got Cory Lindsay, who is an account executive at G2. He's going to be talking about Be Where No One Else Is, which is an intriguing title. I'm looking forward to how he inspires us with his talk today, covering things like the entrepreneurial nature of sales, what it means to be entrepreneurial, and how people want to be sold to. Cory's been with G2 for almost 3 years, having joined in July 2019 as a BDR before being promoted into his current role. And he's currently transitioning, I believe, into another role right now. So looking forward to seeing what 2022 has in store for him. And looking forward to your talk today, Cory. Cheers, mate.
Appreciate it, James. And yeah, thanks again for inviting us to the talk today. As you mentioned, the talk I've got today is Being Where No One Else Is, which is indeed quite a vague title and intended so. But those who will know me outside of this event will likely know that I've got a big kind of passion for mindset and I guess psychology to an extent. And part of that is to be touched upon today around the idea of that mindset within kind of entrepreneurism and actually linking that back to the sales profession as well. I guess before I kind of dig into it in more detail, right, I think there's one thing that's quite interesting to understand is that almost every salesperson that is successful, I've understood, has an entrepreneurial nature to them, right? They're constantly looking to improve. And actually Simon and Iain mentioned it in both their talks just now, always looking to make sure they are the best performers. They are trying to understand what they can do better in order to be that next best sales rep on their team. And the part I find really interesting is that almost every person floods towards the person that is the best performer, which, right, is, I'd say it's logical, right? It makes sense, right? If someone's performing better than you or the best on your team, let's understand what they're doing, understand what they're doing different or doing better, and potentially emulate what they're doing, which is great. And I don't think that should ever be taken away. It just made me think, what else can be done to develop someone personally, rather than kind of developing towards an end goal that is someone's performance? How can we try and actually get better than that individual? Right. I'm a competitive person. I can imagine the vast majority, if not everyone on this call, has an element of competitiveness in them as well. So it kind of led me to a thought of how to kind of get to that stage of potentially being the best out there and better than people around me. Again. So there's two things I'd love to share with you. And again, it's not so much an element of advice, but more something to maybe trigger some thoughts within you as to what maybe you guys can do to continuously understand what else is possible to improve and then actually go out and action it. First one is actually, like I said, people go to the top performing sales reps, which is great, and see what they're trying to do, which is, again, equally great, without necessarily considering what they're not doing, which sounds pretty counterintuitive when I say that out loud. But whatever they're doing is great, but is it only great because that's the only thing we know about? What if they did something slightly different and they could make it better? So almost looking at what they're not doing as an opportunity for growth, as well as what they are doing. An example of this, which I, again, kind of came across in the last couple of months speaking to friends and colleagues, was around the purchasing process of buyers and how that kind of buyer behavior is. So as salespeople, we're always trying to control the sale. And I think, Iain, you mentioned it in your talk as well, in the sense that we're always trying to make sure that we have full control. We know exactly what minute of what day they're going to be speaking to their manager and their board, and therefore we know exactly to tell our manager how to forecast a deal, which is great. But it kept me thinking, okay, well, that's great. Every good sales rep is doing that very well, but who is that actually benefiting? That's probably benefiting us as the sales rep more than it's benefiting the prospects. Just a thought on that side. So what if we were to flip that slightly and actually focus more on benefiting the prospect in that example? Which led me to think about having a slightly less stringent process in terms of timelines with my prospects, which again sounds quite counterintuitive, but more about understanding, okay, why are they buying, really making sure that they understand why they're buying, and almost giving that element of trust to the prospect to sell it internally, and again, help you build out the case with them internally. So far, I've had some interesting results from doing this in the last couple of months, and it seems like it's actually working quite well in terms of, I guess, showing that I have confidence in my own product. I'm not trying to be hyper controlling on how they're selling it internally, which might be perceived as an element of weakness sometimes. So first example there around maybe looking not always towards, but also looking away from what's going quite well. So something to think about. And then in terms of that flip side, right, and another example I'd love to share as a different way of thinking about this is, yes, we can look towards, we can look away from a certain high-performing sales rep in our team, but how about we look around? And actually, there's something I've been quite fortunate at being able to do in the last kind of few months. As James mentioned, I'm transitioning into a new role here at G2, effectively a tiny little startup within the broader company of 500 or so employees. We're a little team of 4, which means I'm getting pretty aggressive visibility into our product team, into our customer success team, the leadership, the marketing, a lot more cross-functional partners, which allows me to understand their positioning a lot better. And actually, I had this really interesting call last week with a couple members of our product team to understand kind of how we're going to develop our product, which then made me think and understand how are they positioning the conversation with me as a sales rep who's effectively going to have to sell whatever we're looking to build here based on the customer feedback. And what I understood was that the way that a product person, at least from a G2's perspective, asks a question is very different to that of a salesperson in general, in the sense that typically a salesperson, and again, this is general, very generalist comment, I know it's not always the case, but we'll be asking questions, yes, from a point of curiosity. Correct. I think most successful salespeople will have that. But there's always almost a subconscious element of pointing and directing your prospect towards the end goal, which eventually, hopefully, means a purchase, supporting your quota, supporting your commission. Whereas a product individual seems to be asking more questions from a more unidirectional way, not trying to point you in any direction, but just genuinely trying to get the truth out of what you may be wanting to try and get. Which again, made me think in terms of my own development, right? What if we were to potentially do that in a more conscious way, as opposed to maybe more subconscious in our own kind of sales cycles and sales opportunities? Theoretically, might mean that we don't close as many deals because maybe some people aren't just quite the right prospects. But what if that was actually then to help prospects a lot more understand what the possibilities are of your product, view you more as that kind of consultant, which so many of us salespeople strive to be towards, and consequently allow us to, yes, maybe sell higher level deals, higher value deals, maybe in less volume, but probably for a longer term, from a longer term for the business perspective. So 2 thoughts to kind of summarize in terms of that side that I really try and focus on from a mindset perspective from my own development is around not just looking towards an individual of success. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to preach stopping that, because that is definitely a great place to start and to continue, but also broadening yourself, looking towards, looking what they're not doing, looking around them, and ultimately finding what is potentially the next thing that you can be doing to make sure that you are going to be better than all the top reps around you quicker. So that's my talk today around the mindset side of things, and same as the 2 previous speakers. Again, super excited to join the Q&A later, and I'll be on the networking side of things as well.
Thanks, Cory. That was awesome. I personally think you're incredibly aware of things that when I speak to a lot of account executives, you definitely got something about you, mate. I hope everybody else in the audience thinks that as well. On to the next speaker, and we'd like to welcome to the stage Danny Tucci. Danny is the sales director for EMEA at Snyk, and he's going to be talking today about how to transform and transition a salesperson's sort of tale of struggles and success. Danny's going to be talking about how successful salespeople can transition into management, but not only that, how important it is to be able to have, a strong handle on mental health within management as well. Danny's coming with a wealth of experience with over 22 years in IT, and 8 of those being in IT security, and having worked for some quality brands along the way as well. Danny's an exceptional sales leader, and today he's going to be joining us to talk about
Thank you,
7 minutes.
Well, thank you, Charles. Thank you, James, for having me on this today. If you say it that way, 22 years, what a long time. And yes, transformation has been part of my basic entire life. If I would tell you that 22 years ago, somebody gave me a chance, and that's why I'm in IT today. 22 years ago, I was still a chef. So I love my food. Maybe you can tell. I'm an Italian chef, so I love Italian food even more. And 22 years ago, somebody walked up to me and said, hey, listen, I think you need to do something else. You can sell. And that's where my career started. I've done every single job in sales. I started as an inside sales SDR, the most important team member in any company. SDRs are the bread and butter of any sales channel we have to build. Secondly, I walked through being an inside sales, going to be a field sales, going into management with a company before Snyk, building a team of 15 very successful sales execs. And now at Snyk, doing the same, building a very successful team. And I wanted to share with you a couple of things that what I've seen along my career. And I've seen people fail, salespeople who were brilliant at what they're doing, being asked to take on a manager role and not being able to say no, getting into this manager role, not really feeling it themselves, maybe not ever wanting to be a manager or a people leader, as I call them today, and actually fail miserably because they couldn't transition from actually being an individual contributor and accepting the fact that once you're a manager, your number is made out of your team. So your commission is paid by how your team performs and how your team actually is on the ground and how much they deliver. So for me, it was always very, when somebody tells me, oh, I want to be in sales because it's easy money, I always say, maybe you shouldn't be in sales then, because the money is certainly good. We all know that, but the money is certainly not easy. Being an individual contributor, as we've seen with the three excellent personas before me, it comes with a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. You have to build yourself up. I always say my success is based on my relationships. This is my headline on any of my CVs on LinkedIn. And why is that? Relationships are key. We need to take care of each other for our customers. We need to learn to listen to our customers. And being a great manager and a great leader comes with if you are able to actually listen. Now, I always ask anybody who wants to become a manager what they would do different than what I would do. And sometimes they would say, well, listen, Danny, I don't know, I would be a bit more accurate. I would maybe check in a bit more with my team. And my question about that is, why would you do that? How? Describe it to me. And one of the aspects is things what I hated in the past myself is I do not like to be micromanaged, for example. I don't like it if my boss checks in 5 times with me a day, if I've done 15 phone calls or if I've done 20 already, if I've done my Salesforce or if I haven't done my Salesforce, I don't like it. So I always ask somebody else back and say, well, if you don't like to be micromanaged, why would you continue? Why would you start doing it when you become a manager? It's pointless, right? The one key that I always say to people who want to transition is, are you able to sit down and listen? Are you able to understand your people's needs? Every individual, every person in your team has different needs. For me, mental health is one of the biggest keys of how we get teams successful. I used to work for a company where I led a very successful team. And the management back then in that company I worked to wasn't really keen on people working from home. Now, I myself personally went through a burnout about 15 years ago. And that was purely down to the fact that some pressure, etc., was put on me and I couldn't cope. And so I went through that and I've learned from it that if my manager would have understood my individual need, that sometimes I have days where I'm just peopled out. And I call them days peopled out, right? I can't see people, but that doesn't mean I'm not capable of doing my job. So I actually introduced in my previous company, the working from home scheme before COVID, way before COVID. And And my team started accelerating because they didn't have to be in the office at 9 in the morning if they had 2 kids to drop off at school. And they could never be in the office at 9 in the morning. No, they were maybe there at 9:30 or 9:45. I just didn't care, as long as the job was done. So being a manager means as well being able to adapt. I want a team that works as a team for each other. I don't like people in my team who are egos and who do 300%, 400%, but don't care about the team. We need to pick everybody up. You as a manager need to develop your own style. Are you a good salesperson because you know how to sell? Can you lead people? That's what you have to ask yourself. I myself, I maybe not have been the greatest salesperson, but I knew that I always wanted to be a manager. I always wanted to lead people because I thrive off that. So for me, it was about 3 things. Self-awareness. If I'm self-aware of how I act, react, this is the biggest key to actually teach somebody and coach somebody. Gratitude and empathy. Gratitude for me, I'm grateful for everything I've experienced in my life. I'm grateful for my team making my number. I'm grateful for everything around. And empathy. Not everybody is perfect. Not everybody can actually perform 100% every day. And we as managers, we should understand that. And the other thing is resilience. You need to be tough being a manager. There is no other way around. You get the pressure from all the sides. Now, I am happy talking about this all day long. I know I have come up to my 7 minutes. So I look forward to meeting a lot of you in the networking round, in the Q&A maybe. And I would like to thank James and Charles a lot today for me to have this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. That was really some thoughtful insights there. And I love how you brought some of your personal story to the fore. And it truly demonstrates the type of leader that you are, that you care about people. So, you know, a great advert to the type of leader you are. Thank you for sharing. And we'll get you back on the Q&A shortly. So this is, we're coming up to our final set of speakers. Now, this is something new to sales confidence. I've always focused on helping elevate the sales profession and helping all of you at each stage of your career with your mindset, well-being and performance. If you're well in your mind, as Danny highlighted, you're going to perform. If you're well looked after and you've got your well-being in check, you're going to perform. But once you perform and you make all this money that we hope to be making, how do you invest it and what do you do with it? And I've been following a few categories in recent times, things like crypto, blockchain, what to do with the property market, stocks and shares, like where are you investing your money? And so I thought it'd be great to get some experts on NFTs, non-fungible tokens, to share their expertise on, is NFTs the next big opportunity? So I've got Becks Perfect and Warren Lincoln. They're going to be talking about the future of NFTs as a sales opportunity and the utility of NFTs. And they've been working in the NFT space and created an organization called Nifty World, which is together helping educate and inform the tech community, so people like us, on the latest developments in technology. I highly recommend that you check out their YouTube channel, Nifty World. It's super informative, and they talk about all the recent drops in NFT, and they're passionate about the trajectory of this technology. So looking forward to hearing this talk. I will invite you up to the stage now. You should be able to see me, Warren, and we can see your screen as well.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much, James. Thanks, everyone. Nice to be here. Really great to meet you all. So we've got 7 minutes to talk to you guys all about the future and the future of technology. I think Warren's with us. He might have a little bit of a freeze on his frame, but oh no, he's back. That's good. So NFTs, the next big sales opportunity. We'll be introducing ourselves in just a second for you. But what we want to do is run through this so that you guys are aware of what it is. Well, firstly, let's tell you a little bit about us. So Nifty World NFT, we are a unique Web3 native media agency. We're the market leaders in creating user-friendly, educational and informative content. And we review lots of different projects across the non-fungible market or the NFT ecosystem. So we work with incredible projects that are more than just a JPEG. And I'll tell you exactly why that is. So first and foremost, myself and Warren are the co-founders and the CEO and commercial director of this. We are also very much bought into this space ourselves. So I have got 12 years of broadcasting experience. I was a resident tech expert and film critic for the BBC, Talk Radio, Talk Sport, QVC, Sky, Channel 4, ITV, you name it. I've probably been on there chatting about the Oscars or some sort of technology. And yeah, I've been doing that for a very, very long time now. But currently, I am all in on NFTs. And then Warren, to my bottom side here, is the commercial director and has over 10 years of experience in sales, 7 years of experience in esports, and has created a commercial revenue stream which was sold to AAA gaming publishers and developers to engage with consumers. So that's a little bit about us. Above us, you can see the NFTs that we like to flex. Mine is a Mutant Ape, which is part of the Mutant Ape Yacht Club and the more widely known Bored Ape Yacht Club. And Warren's is the Crypto Mories, which is a fantastic project which launched just at the end of last year to much avail. So you guys might be wondering, why do we bother with this? You know, surely you can screenshot a JPEG, you can right click it. And why is it important that you don't? Well, let me explain to you the key things around this. So NFTs, what does it stand for? It stands for non-fungible token. And the biggest thing about this is, let's break this down for you. What does non-fungible token mean? Well, the non-fungible part, first and foremost, means that something cannot be interchanged. It is essentially a one of one and is unique. It is also something that you guys might be quite familiar with. It's something that it's a representation of digital ownership. So it's kind of like a certificate of ownership. So if you owned a piece of art, for instance, someone might say to you, oh, I've heard that you own an Andy Warhol or the Mona Lisa. Is that true? How can you prove it? In traditional senses, you probably can't, unless you had a certificate of ownership, which I'm pretty sure for the Mona Lisa wasn't around in those days. But now when it comes to digital art, you can prove your ownership of something. So to give you a more modern explanation of this, if you think of an artist like Damien Hirst, in the real world, it probably will cost you millions and millions of pounds to own a Damien Hirst original. But in the digital world, when he's released an NFT of his work, it originally could have cost you £2,000 and you could claim proof of ownership because it is written onto something called the blockchain, which is essentially a transparent digital ledger which shows all the transactions that you make around a particular digital project. And the token part of non-fungible token is essentially the most exciting thing because it can be access, it can give you the opportunity to do lots of different things with your NFT. And ultimately, it's the biggest opportunity to use what is traditionally seen as possibly a JPEG in a much more exciting Web3 digital way. Now, I just wanted to show you very quickly the picture that we've got on this particular slide here is a World of Women NFT. And to give you some context into how much NFTs are going for at the moment, when we pulled this presentation together, this was sitting at a floor price of 8.35 Ethereum, which is the cryptocurrency in which NFTs are most popularly traded in. And this is kind of coming in at around, I think, Warren, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is in something around £20,000, if not more at this particular time. So we're looking at people spending a lot of money because there are lots of things that you can do with NFTs. It can give you access to utilities. It can give you access to events, merchandise, commercial rights. There are so many opportunities of this. And this then leads on to the opportunities within further things in Web3, like the metaverse. We'll move on to the next slide now, where Warren will take over and talk about the opportunity for you guys.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Becks. Hey, everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, so everybody loves a visual, and we have got some for you guys. So bottom left, what we've got there for you is just an example of what the most popular NFT collections were between March earlier last year and October again last year. These include some what we would deem as blue chip projects. So a little bit of a kind of highlight and deeper detail on what we see as blue chips. So CryptoPunks. CryptoPunks were first brought to our attention in 2017. You could buy a CryptoPunk for something like $150. There were 10,000 CryptoPunks that were created. 24 by 24 pixelated image through an 8-bit style. The background of these guys is they were created as a kind of a recognition of sort of misfits and non-conformists, and very much an ode to 1970s punk culture in the London scene. In October last year, the most expensive CryptoPunk was...
Oh, I think we might have lost Warren for a second there. So let me just continue on until we get him back. We might just have lost him on the connection.
The
here we go. He's back. Warren, sorry, we lost you for a bit.
No worries. So yeah, so CryptoPunk. So October last year, the largest sale for CryptoPunk was $532 million. So without further ado, with the minutes ticking down, I'll just talk about one more project and we'll kick on to the next slide. In April last year, a company called Yuga Labs created a 10,000 PFP, which is a profile project picture project, and that was for Bored Apes. The Bored Apes themselves sold in little under 12 hours. 10,000 images were bought out and $1.2 million was made in 12 hours. The interest about NFTs is two directions. It's the art, is what people know and they love and they really enjoy, and something that resonates with them. And also it's the commercial opportunity. Commercial opportunity is recognized in how established the communities are, how reliable the information is, what type of partnerships are really happening. The opportunity now for investment and then for commercial output is blowing people's minds. Becks, if we can, we'll head on to the next slide. Lovely, thank you. The wearable digital sales or the wider digital sales opportunity. A little bit into kind of this is what we want to do is speak about like who's there and what are they doing. In February last year, there's a company called Artifact, London based. In February last year, Artifact sold $3.1 million worth of NFT sneakers in 7 minutes. Artifact themselves are leading the way as a bridge between digital and IRL fashion through the use of augmented reality. Most recently in December, just last year, they were acquired by Snyk, the apparel brand, for an undisclosed sum. It's moving, the space is moving at such a quick lightning speed that there is such excitement that it's difficult sometimes to sleep in the space we're in. But the sales opportunities are burgeoning. There's so much direction. And one other, I think, really key point to mention and discuss and kind of present to everybody is the metaverse. We've all heard about Meta. Yes, Mark Zuckerberg has come along and rebranded as, but actually Meta's been something which people have been indoctrinating themselves into for some time. If you've got children, friends, family, or yourselves happen to play games, you're already to a degree meta native. The example I'll give everybody is there's 3.2 billion gamers globally. That's a lot of people. There's a lot of people online interacting. And when we go into those metaverses of Roblox or Fortnite or Minecraft, we take our USD, or in this case, our GBP, we take our traditional revenue and we ask either mum and dad if we need to, or ourselves will exchange that for the in-game alternative currency, much like if you were going to exchange your sterling for Ethereum or Bitcoin. So that behavior is already happening. Finally, we want digital ownership. And again, the gamers are setting the bar by how that's happening. And so digital items and the ownership of that are simply NFTs. The difference is they're not authenticated on the blockchain yet because there is still some disparity between how gaming publishers see that. We are extremely bullish on the speed and the ferocity of the direction of where this is going, that we have put our money where our mouth is. And one of the key metaverses, the blue chips that stand out, is the Sandbox. The Sandbox has over 500,000 registered users. Now imagine you get the Monopoly board out, and the Monopoly card you land on after you roll your dice is what you own. You own that space. You can rent the land of that space. You can offer services, advertisement, drive revenue, create promotions, as well as create experiential activity. The sales opportunity in the metaverse of the sandbox is something which has going to absolutely explode. It has. One example I'll give you. One company is currently selling, they are customized luxury villas. A luxury villa will set you a cost of 4 Ethereum. In today's money, that's £16,000. In 12 hours, they have sold out of 74 luxury digital villas. Again, let me just remind everybody, these are digital assets. You're never going to be living there unless you go to the digital world. And Nifty World NFT, our commitment to this space, and the reason why we are so bullish on ourselves and the direction it's going, is we own a space, we own a piece of land. You can see there, if you scroll in, it's next to the very large Atari plot. To conclude, the way we recognize the value of the NFT audience, the space, and the engagement that we're creating, we see Web3, which is what this is, as going beyond shopping online and becoming online. I'm pretty sure, Becks, if I'm not wrong, we don't have any other slides, or maybe I've missed one.
Well, we do. We do have one more slide, guys, which is just to show you. Oh, that's not the one. We'll just slide through this. Is to show you just how you can get in touch with us, which is here, the contact us slide. So if you want to find out more from us, we have 2 ways that our business runs. From the front end of the business is our YouTube channel, where you can find out more about NFTs. You can understand how they work. You can understand what the community is, and you can learn for free on that, which is Nifty World NFT. You pop that into YouTube. And then on the back end of the business, we run a consultancy. So we advise everyone from a small startup who is just, or a one-of-one artist, for instance, who is just needing some help with marketing or understanding how to guide themselves into the world of NFTs. We offer consultancy for them, through to huge corporations that are looking to take their next steps into not just the world of NFTs, but the metaverse and beyond, and to guide them through everything from understanding smart contracts to speaking to marketeers in the space and to understand how to make their mark. And for anyone that has any questions, we'll be around for the networking section of this as well, to help you guys understand in a better way just how to make your move into Web3 and the metaverse, if that's what you want to do.
That was amazing. I honestly feel like this is a moment in time. You guys are so early on this, but I feel like if we're the layman here, I feel that I'm getting an early insight into the future. So I really appreciate you sharing that today and giving us a different angle to our usual talks. So I'm going to invite everybody up to the stream now, and we're going to talk about what we've heard today and get Charles to ask some questions of some of our speakers. So let me just check if I've got everyone there. Is that everyone? Yes, I believe it is. So Charles, do you want to kick off with the first question?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go straight back to our first speaker, Simon, and jump straight into, Simon, you spoke quite openly and around, investing into yourself. Cory, you did. Iain, you did as well. I think pretty much everybody has spoke about investment in some which way, shape, or form. But what would you say has been the most noticeable investment that you've made into yourself that's, helped you to become successful as an AE again at Salsify?
I think there's 2 core avenues I'll go. One is from an industry perspective. So yeah, I obviously understood what e-commerce was, but to the level and extent and the depth and breadth, and really what attracted me with e-commerce was that the technology is going to keep evolving around e-commerce as consumers change their habits. So from an AE in a SaaS world, that's quite interesting because you always have new opportunities and you future-proof yourself. So from an industry perspective, I think it's really crucial to understand where that information is, whether it be in podcasts, LinkedIn. And then from a sales perspective, and that's probably where I really, really double down on really understanding what makes a great salesperson. I think others touched on it, Cory, Iain as well touched on what makes a great salesperson, is being where no one else is and understanding that. So I think learning from peers is a huge aspect to it. I think I'm a member of the AEs of London. I joined as soon as I got the account executive role. I think that's a phenomenal information hub and kind of like trusted advisors of always recommending different books and different tactics, different podcasts, different recommendations. So there's a whole host of things. And I think what you need to do is, and it's very easy as human nature going, when I start a new job, the new job's responsibility is to train me. But in actual fact, it's your responsibility to train yourself. That's what really sets it apart of someone that is good and someone that then becomes great, because they're constantly looking and going, where's the next edge? How can I learn more? And particularly in SaaS, because not only is the world evolving around your industry, but also the company's constantly evolving in terms of what they do and the offering. So there's always opportunities there, and it's really never stop learning. So they're kind of two avenues. One is industry, and one is SaaS selling overall in particular.
I absolutely love that. If I cast my mind back to when I first started in sales, like 9-10 years ago, I was told, and it's stuck with me ever since, like, life gets better when I get better. And that's been like really, really poignant to like my whole career. Has anybody else got like other recommendations from, not just a financial investment? I want to move on to that part in just a moment, but, personal development investments that they've made that have helped them, or, the podcast, the book side of things that can just share with everybody else that's listening today as well?
Well, for myself, I'm just going to go there then. So self-investment. I talked about it in my talk about going through burnout and stuff. And obviously to get out of that, I've discovered a technique called CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think I've had obviously my recommended sessions at the beginning to kind of overcome my own burnout and then move ahead. But afterwards, I've actually invested much more time and seeked even more sessions of CBT, other therapy forms, etc., just to invest in myself as a person, but secondly, invest in my career as well by being able, as a leader, to spot early signs in people which potentially are heading for a burnout, early signs of people which are too much under pressure, any mental signs that are maybe not clear to everyone's eyes. And I think for me as a leader, as a person, this investment has made a huge difference in myself and hopefully as well into my team.
Danny, I absolutely love that.
Love that, yeah. Just to add a kind of a different tangent to that as well, in terms of maybe not so much like a monetary investment, but more in terms of a time investment. Networking, I think, is the one which I know it's a very probably overused word to an extent, but does take some sort of practice and some time to go actually through and actually understand and learn about people and learn from people, whether that's in person, like we hopefully can be in very soon, or whether that's just through kind of LinkedIn, for example. One of the things which I did, and I guess still do, right, is every time I come across someone of interest to me on LinkedIn, just because they do one post that's interesting, or they mention a comment that seems kind of intriguing, I note their name down and I just keep tracking them. So eventually you get a list of 20, 30, 40 people, and you can keep narrowing it down and actually focusing on the right people that are genuinely interesting. So not a monetary investment, but in terms of a time investment, I think that's helped me a lot in terms of how I've been able to choose from the right people to learn from.
That's quality. I know that some people have spoke about, in various different ways of which they've invested into themselves, maybe transitioning that question across to maybe more of the financial side of things. Becks, Warren, from what you guys are doing in the NFT space, where can some of these guys realistically be looking to invest into their financial health as well?
Well, it depends how deep diving you want to go into the NFT space. It's not going to be for everyone. I think anyone can look at the world of cryptocurrency and kind of go, oh, it is for me or it's not for me. And but the way we see it is we always advise people in the NFT space to only spend what you can afford to lose, right? And to enjoy what you're buying, and to do it for multiples of different reasons. We've just reviewed a project today which people buy into this particular project because they want to support the charitable cause that's behind it. And I think that there's lots of entry points that can support the way that you want to view your financial health and wealth going forwards. For us, as we've grown in this space, we've made slightly more strategic, bigger investments. That plot of land in the sandbox for us is us envisioning the future of our company, and from a personal perspective, the wealth that will generate from that. And using that in a way to kind of go, it's a big investment for us to make, and it was a lot of research and a lot of time to get into that, but ultimately the reward will be a lot higher. From a personal perspective, you know, convincing my other half to spend a lot of money on a JPEG is not an easy story to tell, but once we've done it, you know, we've it from an investment point of view, we've done really well, and from a personal point of view, it's made us fall in love with the community even more and understand it even more. And I know, you know, but along the way, there's been a lot of duds, right? So we've had to learn by doing, and with that, you know, we've lost money, and we've gained money, and we've lost money again, and we've gained even more money and then lost it again. And you kind of go, it is the cycle in which you go to learn and grow in this space. So you kind of have to go into it with open eyes and open arms and understand what you're getting yourself into. I don't know, Warren, if you've got any more that you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think as well, like personally, people invest for different triggers, right? Some people are extremely, they could be, I mean, I've now been in the sales industry for kind of broadly around 15 years. And maybe what I would consider investing in, you know, 10, 15 years ago versus now are polars apart. And also the motivations. If you've got family, for instance, are you likely to go out to a really nice gallery and get a really nice piece and put it on your wall, right? Probably we'll need a lot of stakeholders internally to get that over the line with. Could be a little bit trickier. I do know, though, that from an NFT perspective, when we are making the decisions based on what we're doing, we're looking at how much time the communities and the project leaders are investing themselves. Like, can we pick up their behavior? Can we look at, and they're the triggers for us guys. Like, are they demonstrating the expectations we would want from someone that really cares about what they're doing? Because that's the thing, right? Osmosis. You know, if you're around good things happening, you're typically going to benefit from that, and vice versa. So yeah, like all the content we create, we always say we're not financial advisors. Never more apparent than here. But yeah, no, Charles, it's definitely been like we're big fans of, if you're going to do something, you lead by example, and that's no different from leadership in business. That's no different from being on a football pitch or being with friends that are kind of making a key decision, right? Everyone needs to buy into that together. So yeah, it's good also working with Becks. It's great having someone else that I can kind of bounce. And I think as a leader or anyone in business place, if you've got people that are like-minded, get different perspectives. That's always a healthy thing for, The
biggest thing that I would just say, just to round what we were talking about off, is you don't look at NFTs in any other way than you'd look at investing in a business. We are all, if there's 10,000 NFTs available and maybe 5,000 people buy into those NFTs because some people buy more than one, or they buy, 3 or 4 or whatever, you're essentially a shareholder in a business, and that NFT is the business that you're investing in. So they have a responsibility to deliver to you as the shareholder everything that they're saying on their roadmaps that they're going to deliver in. And that's what drives us to know which are the good investments and which aren't. And I think if you look at it like that, where a lot of people look at it as just a quick flip or something like that, it's an unhealthy way to look at things. It's actually got to look at things in a more of a long-term hold in this digital space, because because we are still so early and the opportunity is actually so great. So again, it all comes down to, as Warren said, your perspective, your responsibilities in the real world, and what you're willing to do to get yourself into the digital world.
I see a lot of similarities there to like sales in general, right? You said, you win some, you lose some. We've all chased deals. We've all lost deals. We thought we were going to get them. We've been in for a penny. We've been in for a pound. And from that perspective, and, you've definitely got to be involved in it in order to get that. And I think that comes from an activity, a research and investment of time to know and understand that. Just like Iain was talking about, from nurturing champions throughout his process and breaking it down. I'm guessing you guys probably apply a similar science to the investment world of knowing what you're tracking when, and then making those key decisions from that perspective, right?
I think Charles, to kind of pick up on that point, like the big benefit, and I'm going to associate the word benefit with COVID, which is quite unique. The big benefit that I had is that I couldn't leave the house, right? And with an 8-year-old, I will put my hand up and say that was still very, very difficult. But not being able to have school and access and that kind of outlet. And never before has mental health been more appropriate than literally being confined to your four walls like for a good 12 months. But for when COVID hit, and Becks and I were talking about, like, you know, our direction and how we want to really kind of, you know, create this, what we see as a first. Like, we knew the time that around the investment of research and the investment of understanding the detail. Also, any kind of standard business, you know, your business strategy, your SWOT analysis, like what makes you different. If you're a salesperson selling the product, well, the first rule is like, know how you stand out. And it's always going to be a really key way on kind of getting your message across, because whether you're picking a phone up, whether you're knocking the door, whether you're seeing someone at an event, people need to remember you. And we know that we need to be acknowledged and perceived as innovators, trailblazers, people that are pushing this narrative forward. That's why opportunities like this are great, because it gives us an opportunity to bring necessarily not people that aren't, let's say, the most crypto savvy, because also we don't really enjoy cryptocurrency. And I don't know if that was a perception on the call, but I think it's important to talk about. We love the NFT explosion and the direction and the benefit that Web3 can give. An example, 2 days ago, we didn't travel to Australia, but we went to the Australian Open. You see, we went there through Decentraland, which is a metaverse. We went there, we experienced the brands, we saw Ralph Lauren's shop, we managed to take part in some activity. You see, that's where the barriers break and the opportunities explode, because you can leave your house without leaving your house, and you can change your reality without changing your reality. Like, there's so much newness to this that we absolutely need to be in environments like this. James was great to bring us into, so we can talk about what's happening.
Love it, guys. I know there could be loads more questions. I'm going to draw a line under it for this afternoon, because I want to get into the networking and get people in the audience to actually come and speak to you individually. So the speakers, round of applause to all the speakers. Thank you very much for contributing to today's event. These aren't possible without your contribution, and I really value the time that you've invested in preparing and delivering your talks today. Just to let everybody know that you can get access to Sales Confidence content on the Sales Confidence YouTube channel, and also on any podcast platform. You'll start to be able to listen back to the 7-minute talks as you go about your day or you're exercising, which is cool. And also, we've got a membership which is free to use, which is a structured pathway to your career success, which you can access at salesconfidence.com. So that's it for now. We're going to head into the networking. So for the speakers, if you just want to head back into the place that you registered, there's a link in the private chat here on the right, and I'm going to stop the broadcast. But thank you for everybody for listening in today. And thank you, speakers.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Charles.
James, thanks.